Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Kisser, a registered therapeutic counselor and ADHD coach. Welcome to our program today, where I talk about ADHD, how it affects our lives, not just the lives of the person with ADHD, but the community in whole, everyone related, and educating people as to what it really is, how to work with it. And I bring in all sorts of guests to help out with all sorts of areas of life. Today, my guest is Dana Chrysler. She is an amazing woman, a good friend of mine. Dana, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. What is it that you do, Dana?
I am actually a nurse in the day, I should say my other job. I am a registered nurse, and I'm also coaching for elderly, well, caregivers for elderly parents that are home to help them care for a parent with COPD.
Nice. That sounds like a quite not just a big responsibility, but a heavy job.
Yeah, my dad was diagnosed about 10 years ago, and he just recently passed away in May, and it's just a really tough disease. It just takes your breath away, literally, little by little, and it makes it so hard for them to even just have a conversation, for 5 minutes without losing their breath. Even with having oxygen and all the medications in the world, there wasn't much you could do. You just had to let it ride out, like a lot of diseases, unfortunately.
That sounds really hard. So, for our listeners that might not know what COPD is, could you explain that?
Sure. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and it affects your lungs, obviously, and
Mhm.
it just makes everything kind of brittle, and it just doesn't, you just can't get the oxygenation of a normal person that, has their full lungs capability and accessibility. Um, I don't want to go into the alveoli and all the little things, the intricacies,
Yeah,
but
it might be above, what some
anyway,
people want to know about, but that,
uh,
yeah, that sounds really, really challenging, and I can't even
yeah,
imagine what that's like, especially
yeah,
as
it's so
a
scary.
caregiver.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so scary. uh you know it just takes their breath away. We used to play games at the table, and dad would just try and talk, and he would get so frustrated because if you didn't listen to him right away, or if somebody was talking over him, you get really upset because he only has so much breath, and then he has to rest and he has to wait again, and by then it's like it's lost its momentum, or it's lost the thought, or maybe whatever we were talking about. So it just, as time goes by, he communicated less and less, and he still communicated, but it was really tough for him to get the words out. But it's very hard to see someone you care
Mhm.
about so much, especially this really tough guy his whole life, very mechanically inclined, and always up at the crack of dawn, and always just working on the roof or working on a vehicle or something. And then you see somebody that is just, there's nothing really you can do in the end. It's a very hard struggle for them, but it's also hard for the family members.
Yeah, yeah, that does sound very challenging. It's when you mentioned about he'd be speaking if somebody would interrupt him, he would lose his train of thought, and that is just that's very typical of someone that has ADHD. If they're talking and somebody interrupts them or distracts them, it can be really overwhelming and frustrating. So I that would even magnify it if that person had ADHD. And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking as a caregiver and with someone that has ADHD and they're a caregiver,
Yeah.
I can only imagine how challenging that would be. I mean, myself, I have ADHD. I live with it, and I have been a caregiver for my son who's AUDHD. He's come a long way. However, I was a caregiver for him, and as a caregiver with ADHD, wow, that can be so incredibly challenging. So, tell me about some of the challenges as a caregiver.
Um, it's really hard when you're a single caregiver. I can't imagine being a single parent, and taking care of a child, or even having it yourself. But a caregiver, like my stepmom, you know, she took care of my dad obviously 24/7, and we would go and relieve, and we would go over as much as we could and spend time, my brother and I, and just to cheer him up because, you know, he broke his hip 2 weeks before he
Hmm.
passed away. And that was kind of the nail because he's like, you know, I can't even do anything now just to get up to go to the bathroom. And my
Yeah.
dad's biggest thing was he was a strong guy, and he's like, I am not going to the bathroom in this bed. So he's like, he would call us and we would drive over and just make sure we got him up and helped him with the commode and back. But it was just seeing him like that was very sad, you know, that he needed someone to help. It was just killing him to ask for help, you know, because he was such a proud man, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, you look at the generation, you know, of my dad, you know, the
Mhm.
70s and 80s, you know, and
Mhm.
the generation, they're just so proud. They're just such hard workers. I mean, some of
Yes.
them can work circles around the 20-year-olds, you know, still. So
Oh
it's just
gosh, yes.
amazing, you know, how different times are and stuff, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, you know, I just tried to help with what I could being a nurse and some of the ideas I came up with. But my dad was very innovative and inventive. He would think of things to do so that he could be more independent, you know.
Really?
He Yeah, he would use his grabber. I mean, he had a nebulizer so that he could get himself his treatments.
Right.
And it had a little handle on it, but his hands, because he had bad shoulders, he had a hard time. He couldn't hold it while he was getting his medicine ready. And you can't really lay it down or it dumps everything out. It's
Right.
kind of
Yes. Yes.
it's almost like a water hose where you hold the handle. You can't
Yeah, I'm
really.
familiar with it myself personally, but yeah,
So
some others may
anyway,
not be.
he like took a pair of scissors and cut a niche like out of his trash can so that he could put it on there, take the top off, get his medicine ready, and take it and squirt it in, and then grab it off of his trash can. He even
Wow.
made for his journal. You know, he
Really? That's creative.
what are those? I don't know what those things are called. My husband would, but those little the clasp or the little rings you put your keys on, and
Oh
they have
yes.
like
Okay.
opening.
Right.
Well, my dad
Carabiners.
my dad had one of those, and he had it hooked to a piece of the table underneath the table, and he could hook his urinal, like the
Mhm.
handle, into that so that he
Wow.
had somewhere where he could reach. He had us put up cardboard and fasten the cardboard to the one side of his hospital bed so that
Mhm.
nothing fell over on the floor, because hospital beds have all this space and they have all the,
Yeah.
you know. So we put all that in there for him, and it was just cardboard, but it was stuff that was inexpensive, you know, and trying to figure out what kind of equipment does he need at this time. Like every stage is different, right? 10
Yeah.
years. And I'll tell you what, when people are not ready to change their lifestyle or their homes with their equipment, they will let you know. We had
Yeah.
it all set up one year when my dad came back from Florida, and he was so upset with us. You know, I don't need a shower chair. I don't need this. I don't need the wheelchair. Like we had everything in the house, and he was ready to kill us. But we had the one good thing that he couldn't take out was we had put in a shower handle, an extra shower handle. So if he was sitting down, we knew it would get
Yeah.
to that. When he was ready, he says to me, I kept all this stuff in my house. He's like, do you still have that shower chair? When he was ready, you know,
Yes.
do you still have this? Do you still have the commode? Oh yeah, I've got 3 of them. So, you
Right.
know, we would take everything over when he was ready, and he'd have it there for himself. But at least you have to give people the choice and as much independence as possible, because they lose that, you know, in
They
the
do.
end.
Yeah.
Last month or 2 months, my dad couldn't drive, you
Yeah.
know, because he just couldn't. And
I'm just going to
they,
pause you here for a sec. Yeah, those are all really fascinating things. And yeah, I can only imagine just the blend of emotions that are going on for you, reflecting and remembering what it was like going through the stages, and that really creative component that you mentioned about the carabiner for hooking things on the side of the bed. Yeah, because I know I'm always looking for more creative ways to help out my clients with things with their ADHD, and the cardboard, that's genius. That's just
yeah,
genius. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And even with whether it's the person with COPD, if they have ADHD, or the caregiver that has ADHD, it's almost like layer and layer and layer and layer. I
Mhm.
can't imagine just even the additional struggles. Like I know
Yeah.
what it was like for me as a caregiver, but share more what it was like for you as a caregiver.
My brother and I would try and share the responsibilities. We would talk every day, just kind of communicate, who's going over. My brother lived like an hour away though, so it was harder for him. So we kind of took, my husband and I kind of took the week time, and then my brother would come in like on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday to give us a break.
Yeah,
Because my dad's wife, she was really, even though she wouldn't admit it, because some people are proud, she
yeah,
was really having a hard time. You could tell she was really exhausted, really frustrated, really short with dad. She didn't mean to be. I mean, you could see it going back and forth between the two of them, just because it's a lot when people are sick,
yeah,
and it
yeah.
wears on,
You get
and
tired.
yeah, yeah. And there was a lot of fatigue there and tired. And when we'd go over sometimes, I mean, it was tough because, we were trying to help dad and distract him, but we could see how, my stepmom was struggling too as a caregiver because she really didn't get a break. She was there 24/7. She
Yeah,
would sleep, and then my dad would wake her up by maybe calling out, because he had to get up to the commode, or he needed to go to the bathroom or do something, or he couldn't breathe, just help me or help me turn or something. So
hmm.
it's really, it's a struggle, between the two,
Oh,
because
I guess, yeah,
people are short with each other because they're both tired, and neither one of them want to see the other one suffer. My dad didn't
yes,
want to see my stepmom suffer as a caregiver, but and he was proud, but she also didn't want to see him suffer as a patient.
yeah,
She wanted to do what she could to, make things better for him. But when you're tired and you're both short, people get frustrated, they get
yeah,
burnout, they get overwhelmed, and it doesn't matter. It's really hard. People need breaks, you got,
definitely. They need that respite relief for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
And, and even the sleep, that's such an important component. And as with if the caregiver is lives with ADHD already, then they already know it's like a good sleep and ADHD, it's really difficult to have. There's a lot of work to be done in order to get that good sleep. So
yeah.
that kind of adds an extra layer if you're a caregiver for sure. So then as the caregiver, uh what what sort of things do you
You
yes,
want to get the sleep that you can when you can.
yeah,
It's probably like
yes,
having kids, or taking care of somebody. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're healthy with yourself, as healthy as you can be. Maybe reading something that's going to be good for your mental health, eating right, drinking water, and getting your sleep when you can. Getting on a schedule. My dad was kind of on a schedule, which was nice, and he would only ask for help if he was like really in rough shape that he had to ask.
yeah,
Where there's other people that ask all the time, or they just don't want to be alone, because they just want to be with somebody,
yeah,
but it is tough as a caregiver, because you do need rest, but you
yeah,
can't be too proud to ask for help. You got to ask for help, and I think that's a very
yes,
hard struggle for a lot of people, because you feel like you're being judged, and you already have all these
definitely.
things going on in your head, and you're already
Mhm.
worrying about things, and oh my gosh, should I have done this? And I think we dwell on things too much, about maybe the person we're taking care of, or what does this other person think in the family, or they get, people are cranky to each other in the family, the dynamics, so it gets a little bit crazy, and it's a lot for the caregiver for sure, but
Yeah, definitely.
you got to be strong, because the patient, my dad, you don't want him to see that, you don't want him to be hurting because we're struggling.
Yeah.
So, there was a day that we had to take care of something for my dad, and my brother started breaking down, and he started crying, and I just said,
Mm.
"You got to get out of the house. You can't be in here." I said, "His wife cannot see you like that. She can't handle it." I said, "And we don't want dad to see you. You got to go outside." You know? But it was the nurse part kicking in too. I'm like, you got to get yourself together, or just have your moment. It's okay to have your moment. I never want to say don't have a moment and suck it up. That's
Yeah,
terrible to
you
say,
gotta have that moment.
but you
Every
got to
yeah,
walk out sometimes, just refresh,
yes,
because you
step
taking that
away.
moment of time for yourself, or a break because somebody else is stepping in. You really need to let yourself and allow yourself to do that. You can't be so hard on yourself,
Exactly.
ever.
Exactly. Yeah, have that grace for yourself all the time, especially as a caregiver, that nurturing of self, that caring for self, definitely that compassion for self.
Yeah. Yeah.
allowing yourself to have the emotions and to express them because, there's, I mean, things are better now, but for like you and I, our generation and and older, it was like, no, men weren't allowed to express themselves. And so how
Yeah.
does that manifest then? It manifests in their body as illness, as sickness, as disease. And I'm sure that's why men die so much sooner than women, because women, we express our emotions, but
Yep.
men
Yeah.
not so much. So yeah,
Yep.
here's something for you men.
It's very
Express
true.
your
Very true.
emotions.
I mean,
It
my brother
You don't
is
have
very
to, yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
an emotional guy, and my
Yeah, that's
husband,
great.
he's an emotional guy, but he's a sensitive guy, like,
Yeah,
so I'm lucky in that respect. I like that because my dad was like that. He was a hardcore for years, but
yeah,
having kids, I think kids soften you up when you get older. You start to realize what you have. And I think, I mean, I
yeah,
don't have kids, but I just see it in my father's eyes, how proud he is of, how proud he was of us. And you know what? It's a gift. It's a gift to be there with your loved one, with ADHD, with COPD, with diabetes, with whatever. But
yeah,
it's a gift to have that time. And especially if the person is all there, at least with their minds. We had a lot of good times. I mean, the one thing that we did was we played games with them, we distracted and we told them stories. But my dad, when he was doing good on a day, he would tell us stories. And we as caregivers and loved ones, we would actually tape audios. And we have
yeah,
some really odd because he would choke us. He would
yeah,
be very upset with us if he knew we were taping him because he never liked pictures anyways or audio or video. So we would just like literally put our phone on and put it down and he'd start talking about stories and writing a journal as a caregiver. Those are the
yeah.
things you remember later that are so beautiful. They really are. And
They
that's what we,
are, yeah. Totally, yeah. And I can relate to what you're saying. So I know that my mom, she always loved to tell stories, and I would hear her say the same stories over and over and over again. And I didn't mind because she would just light up. Like I could hear her say the same story 100 times and she would light up every time. So I would listen because, it brought her joy and that brought me joy. And, listening to my grandparents talk, my aunts, my uncles, and even just, anytime I meet someone that's, older, like as long as I can remember, um, I, I loved listening to older people because they always had fascinating stories and they would light up when they tell them. Like there's just so much gold there. So
I
much.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree. That's the perfect terminology for that too, that
Yeah.
there was just so many beautiful stories. We can learn so much and we lose that history and that past from them, because
Yeah.
we don't ask or we don't take the time, and there's so many gifts in people that we don't realize, that we just
Yeah.
have to pay attention to.
So Dana, tell me some of the things that you do with your routine to help take care of yourself.
For me, I try and drink at least 10 cups of water a day. I got
Yeah.
into getting a health coach this year because, you never know when you're going to be a caregiver. None of us do until it
Yeah.
comes.
Yes.
Anybody, our kids, our loved ones, our husbands, wives, parents. I mean,
Pets.
so if you don't have
Yeah.
the energy inside of you or, taking care of yourself, then you'll burn out and then you'll get sick and nobody's there to care for the person that you love the most that stands beside you. So for me, I usually walk probably at least 5 out of 7 days, not a really long walk, but I try and get my steps in and I try and eat as healthy as I can most of the time. Not always, but most of the time because I got a health
Nice.
coach and that's helped me,
Yes.
because hey, if we don't know something, we just look it up, find someone that can do it. That's their specialty. And when you mesh well with somebody or you find someone that works for you and they're there and their heart and soul's in it with you, it's a great feeling because you learn a lot more when people have that heart and soul.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. When you have that connection, definitely
Yeah.
when you have that connection. And yes, yeah, I know who you're referring to. She's an amazing lady and she's going
Yeah.
to be a guest too here pretty soon. I believe she's on the road touring. So that's going to be a treat too, because, I'd love to hear things from her perspective.
Yeah.
And just something that I always share with my guests about the different aspects of ADHD is I always try to strive for. Sometimes it's coincidence and sometimes it's planned that the guests that I have has ADHD, whether it's diagnosed or undiagnosed. And so that just, it just seems to have that beautiful flow, that beautiful flow. What do you think? What do you think, Dana?
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
think there's so many people out there that they have no idea they have it.
Yes.
That, or like me, I think I have some of it, but not a bad case of it. But I think that I struggled, especially as a kid, with it. But we all grow up differently, so there's a lot of stuff in there. You know what I mean? That's intertwined.
Yes.
Just that, so you don't always know if that's what it is. But when I was a kid growing up, I struggled with studying. I mean, I remember reading something 100 times, and my dad would say, "Well, what's the answer to that? I just read you the paragraph," and I'm like, "I don't know." I mean,
Yeah.
or get really bad test anxiety, any little noise, and I would just get that freaking out inside, because then when my anxiety kicked in for testing, or people leaving the rooms and the door slamming, any kind of noises, distractions, just
Yeah. And then try to
you're
refocus
a
again.
kid.
Yeah,
Huh? Yeah.
definitely. Yes, I remember that. I remember that struggle, and I'm sure every listener here that's listening to this is saying, "I hear you, sister. I hear you."
See, but you feel alone back then, it's like, I'm the one
Right.
that's different. I'm the one that, is odd. And, one year in nursing school, actually, they put us all in a room and they said, this room is going to give you guys more time. This is for test anxiety, people that need it. And
Yeah.
we went there, and the teachers were literally like, okay, you're got 15 more minutes. You got half an hour left. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that is not the way you should put people into a room that have anxiety issues.
No, you don't tell them.
And they shouldn't allow people to leave the room, because every time someone gets up, slams a book or does something, slams the door's in and out, it totally distracts people.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's really hard for people. And I just never wanted to admit that I had learning difficulty, because I didn't know if it was just me, laziness, or if it was attention span. I don't know. You know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
think that for sure I have a touch of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's like, wow. I'd be I'd be curious to find out what percentage of people were actually went into that room for yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me that in a group of people that there's multiple people in there that are living with ADHD, whether they're aware of it or not, and they're all thinking the same thing, thinking, I feel like I'm the odd sock, that nobody else gets it and understands. When, if we start to talk about it, then we realize, wait a minute, you get it? What you mean you have that? You mean you do that too? What? And you struggle with it? And then, it's
Yeah.
like,
And when you're kids, you're
the
too
more you need.
embarrassed, to say anything, because you're different already, and you don't want to be more different. You don't want to be picked on. So
Yeah,
yeah, you don't know how many kids were going through that, or, realize that.
yeah, yeah, definitely, for sure. And I just, I love this shift. It is it is typical of our ADHD minds. We get on one topic and then we're somewhere else. And that's okay. We're just gonna go with that because this is real life. And
Yes, I agree.
this is gonna stay in here because this is real life. The things that change and the shifts. And I'm sure that you folks, you get that. You get that. So just like Dana gets that, just like I get that. And even with, I'm sure as when you're doing caregiving, probably just distractions left, right, and center there, even just going to get something and you might get a little bit distracted and then have to pull yourself back, or someone reminding you to pull yourself back. And yeah,
And
that
just feeling
circle.
overwhelmed, because it just gets
Yeah.
to be too, because you're pulled in too many directions. And sometimes I felt like, well, I couldn't take it, or certain, areas or things that you were doing, and it's like, you look at other people like, how are these people so calm?
Yes.
Or how are they not feeling the overwhelm that I'm feeling, the little guy inside of me going,
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's like, what's your secret?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Dana, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for coming on the
Thank
program
you.
today, for sharing your experience and with caregiving and COPD, and just, the aspect, and just from the perspective of someone that, has lived with ADHD, that's, not diagnosed, but, kind of like, well, do I not? And because it really is a spectrum. Some people it's just like just this much. And then other people it's like, whoa, it's just poof, it's their whole everything. So
Yeah.
that's just an absolute delight. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, and with your coaching, that's just taking off and flourishing. I'm just, thrilled for you that you're doing so well in that, with coaching the caregivers and helping them out. So how can they get a hold of you, Dina?
My Facebook page,
The
Dana Christopher Cromback, is what my Facebook page is.
Awesome. And that information will be in the write-up down below, so that folks, you can reach out to Dana if that's the kind of thing that you're going through and you want a coach to get that support. She's your person to reach out to. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Remember to reach out to people and let them know what it's like in your world, because ADHD it's not bad parenting. It's not poor behavior. It's not laziness or sloppiness. It's real.
Don't be afraid to ask. That's the biggest thing,
Yes, for sure. Yes. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Be blessed. Have a fabulous day. Thank you.
Thank you.